migration? Anyone who read it might have an answer for why a whole chapter on migration. I should be fearful at this point? Should I start shaking in my boots that no one has read it? All right. What was the question? Why migration? Okay, why? Well, that first sentence, right? It's a really important part of the human experience, right? If everybody came around here like the Jews pointed out for us, every human being, if you go back far enough, is of course a migrant. And in fact, our very existence, the way we are, not two legs necessarily, but the kinds of things that we have to do, all of those things, we've been migrating, and it's what made us what we are. Right? Migration is fundamental to the human experience. But today, we have several reasons for migration. My personal favorite is this one. The instinct for travel. I am an avid traveler. I love going places. It's possibly I was born an anthropologist, who knows? But I absolutely love travel. It doesn't have to be far away places. Right? I'm perfectly content to drive through the United States and see all the things. It makes me so happy just to see all the things. And the very act of traveling I find satisfying. While everyone else is like, oh God, 6 hours on a plane, and then 3 hours on a layover, and then another 12 hours on a plane. I'm like, but we're going somewhere, right? I can't stand flying, not because it's boring, but because I can't wait to get to where I'm going. But, ooh, this is fun too. I love being on the plane, even though I know they're dangerous. Of course, I actually have a stand better chance of being killed by a cow than being killed in a plane, and I don't eat people. So, of course, we have some people who migrate against their will, right? They're leaving where they are, looking for jobs. Many of us are in this classroom because somebody left where they were, looking for a job. We're here now because somebody was looking for a job. And primarily, the reasons for traveling, the reasons for migrating are not joyous. They're about economics, right? It sucks here, I'll go there. Sometimes the migration isn't even across countries. Sometimes it's across states. I lost my very best friend in the whole world to Northern California. It took her away from me for job opportunities. And then it took your brother right behind. Right? So it's just economic motivations can split us up. That might change things like our family structure. It might change our marriage structure. So actually, as much as I will, in all honesty, admit, don't love this chapter, I will admit that it is important. So, if we look at even the very, very first humans we know of who migrate, they leave for economic reasons, right? We talked about there possibly being too many people or not enough resources, or a combination of both. That forces Homo erectus out of Africa and into much less comfortable Asia. And in our own modern societies, this migration has created uneven economic development. Right? Not every place has the same economic opportunities, and in some cases we have what we call a brain drain, right? Where all the people who get an education move elsewhere. I don't know if you guys know this, but you probably do if you live on Facebook at all. And how many of you are left who don't live on Facebook? Very few. And you probably saw, Germany is offering free university educations to American students. Did you know this?
Yes.
You can go to university 100% for free in Hamburg, right? Hamburg's a good city. That's where my sister lives. It's a good city. It's a very cosmopolitan city. It's not quite Berlin, but it is still, it's a good time, a good place. So that's trying to get people with skills to come to where they are. You may see people from just below us, right to the south, sending their kids north for economic opportunities. I think I told you guys that I'm absolutely in love with Indian soap operas. Love them. They're so dramatic. They're hard for me to get, though, here in the States because I don't have cable. But whenever I travel, I always find them on cable channels, right? Oh, this boy loves this girl, but he can't marry this girl because his mother says no. This girl has been standing next to her long-lost sister all of this time, but she didn't know. I just love them. But every other commercial, if not every commercial some nights, is send your kid to medical school in the US. Oh, your kid's going to medical school in the US. In between, like, here are some convenience foods that are natively appropriate. Mostly it's send your kid is, of course, going to medical school, and you will follow. So we end up with these favored places of migration. Again, we often have very rich and very poor nations right next to each other. Are we a rich nation or a poor nation? We are rich. You look around, right? Where do you need to go for clean water? Out home. Actually, no, you get clean water in the back of this room, right? All of you did not have to worry about whether or not you had clothes this morning, whether or not you had food this morning. You had those things. We are a rich nation. To the south of us, we have impoverished nations. Right? Go south and keep going for a while until you get another rich one. And we try to equal those things out, like NAFTA. NAFTA was an attempt, the North American Free Trade Agreement was an attempt to equalize within the same continent the economic conditions. It was not so very successful in that way. So if you can't feed your family at home, but you can cross a border and get a job, then you will do so. And so we may see countries where a good number of the workers are not actually even legal residents of the place that they are working. Not just here. In Germany, we have a large influx of people from Turkey who come in as labor. So, I'm sorry for the tiny time. Obviously, we've had a high level of migration from Mexico in recent years, but as in American history, you know that Mexico isn't the only place that has provided immigrants, right? Ireland, England, Germany, Scotland, all of these places, Italy, have all dumped large levels of migrants at some point or another. Now, some of the natural resources that we find in areas we consider poor areas of the world, remember we talked about colonialism before, right? And they were pretty well wiped out because of forced labor and having their natural resources stripped from them and getting diseases that they weren't previously exposed to. So when you're a non-nation state, so you're a smallish state, you may have a centralized government that may not be for the level of the United States centralized government, you're going to have a lot of difficulty thriving. So we have a lot of positions in terms of economic positions for unskilled labor. You, as an American citizen, is it your goal to take one of those jobs? You may be in one right now, right? If you're lucky. Right? Some of you have been applying to many jobs. You're just like, no, thank you, no, thank you, no, thank you. You're like, oh, I can't work at Home Depot? What the hell? Right? By the way, for giggles, I filled out an application at Home Depot. I was not taking a call. And I was like, I'm a doctor, you asshole. Why can't I work for a Home Depot? I fix things. I know how to do stuff. And I'm a doctorate. And they were like, you won't stay. You're right, I won't. Right? I didn't actually want to work at Home Depot. I just wanted to see how hard it was to apply. I had like 2.5 hours. It was a 2.5-hour application process. Many of you are familiar with this, right? There's the whole personality test. Like, you see someone who's doing something. Do you A, tell your supervisor? B, ignore it, right? And I was like, you walk on, right? None of my business. So these low-skilled, low-wage jobs are not considered for Americans careers. right? We're all got our aim higher. Even for some of you who, when you were considering whether or not you were going to attend college or possibly attend a career college, right, a technical school. What happened when you told people you were thinking about applying to a technical school? Oh, no, hell no, no you won't. You will not be a laborer, my child, my nephew, my grandchild. Oh, no, you won't. You will be a white-collar worker. Well, newsflash, there aren't that many of those jobs, right? If you came to college to get a job, leave college. The job is not waiting for you after you get out of college. You came to college to get an education, you're in the right place. You came to college to become a different person, you're in the right place, because we will definitely change you. Not always, but if you came so that you can get a job, unless you're training specifically for that job, like we have here. We have, career and technical education here. You want to learn how to be a welder? You're in the right place. You want to learn how to make a video game? You're in the right place. You want to learn how to produce commercial music? You're in the right place. You want to one day somehow make money off of your degree? Good luck with that. Right? That's not why we come here. But nobody accepts, oh, I just want to be a laborer. Right? Every parent wants more for their child. So who does those jobs then? If nobody wants to be a laborer, who's going to be a laborer? We have two options. You guys, the young. Right? The young with no options and no education and / expectations. Right? So we can hire you for, what is the minimum wage? Okay, so for $9 an hour. I can hire you for $9 an hour, and I can make you, right, clean up restrooms, serve chicken. Are you going to stay there forever? You're like, no. Not until December, if I have anything to say about it, right? So you're planning on leaving. So who's going to fill that job? There's more of you, yes, but there's not an infinite number of young people. So who fills those jobs? Migrant labor, right? That's right, because the migrant labor, they come across and they're like, $9 an hour? Sweet! That is fantastic! Or that is at least livable! I can send money back home! Then they find out how expensive it is to live here, and it becomes a little bit different. But if you're going back and forth across the border, that's a little bit better. Earn the money here, spend the money there. That's a good situation. Yeah. So here we're looking at different conditions of people moving from place to place, why they might do so. Sometimes migration is part of the culture. It's like if you take the Basidia, they're out. They move all the time because they have to move with their sheep. Migration is a part of their life. The Hopi, their language is, everything is verbs are conjugated in terms of movement. Is it still moving? Will it move again? Has it moved recently? Everything's about movement. The way their concept of time is also movement. We have a concept of time that is lines. They have a concept of time that is circles. And so everything is movement. And so that reflects the fact that migration is normal. What if you tell your parents, I'm going to move away to go get a job for $9 an hour? Right? All of your parents would be like, oh, hell no, you're not. Right? You're like, but I can get $9 an hour in Arkansas, and I can make it work out for me. And your parents would be like, nope, you're staying right here. You are going to get a career, and I'm going to put you through school until, or you're going to, at the very least, I'm going to let you live here until you finish school, and you will go on and you will do these things. So we actually need this migrant labor. Absolutely do, because you're not going to be it. So, when you talk about pushes and pulls, pushes are things that push you out, your homeland. Go that way. Pushes can come in a lot of forms. Sometimes the pushes are because you got no jobs where you are, right? That's a push. Nothing for me here, I'm moving on. Sometimes the pushes are big things like there's no water, there's no food, there was an earthquake, there was a tsunami. I used to go to this office, but the tsunami took my office away. right? So where am I going to go? Somewhere where there wasn't a tsunami, right? Sometimes it's war. I can't go to work because they're shooting people on the block. I need to move now, right? That is a reason to move. Sometimes you have to move or you have to leave because suddenly whatever you identify with has become the enemy. So, pre-World War II Germany, suddenly being Jewish wasn't very fun, suddenly. Just got more fears. But being Jewish became a bad idea, now you had to go. Right? You couldn't have a job, couldn't own property, you had to go. We're coming up on Thanksgiving, right? Those weird pilgrims. Right? We talked about this before. Pilgrim does to us, that indicates, like, when we think about our own pilgrims, we start thinking about those funny hats and the little buffaloes and turkeys, right? Take that word and you realize pilgrim, in any other context, these people are making a pilgrimage to Mecca. This is a pilgrim. We go, oh yeah, those are usually religious people, very, very religious people. And in the case of the people who were our founding group, not only were they religious, they were so religious, the other religious people thought they were bad. Right? The British Puritans, they were too puritanical for the Puritans. So they had to leave. They were too fundamental for the fundamentalists. So they had to go. And then we found our own country as a result. Sometimes it's about looking at, you're going to send one member of your family. The whole family isn't going to migrate, but you're going to send one sacrificial person out into that other country. They're going to work, 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 and send all of the money home, right? And they will live on very little here. The working conditions for that person are usually extraordinarily hard. But then they will send substantial amounts of money home. I have a friend who, she works here, well, not here, she's in Albuquerque. And she has a daughter, and she's a single mom. She still saves probably 50% of her income to send home to her mom and sign off. I think it's impressive. Like, how do you live on so little? She goes, why do you need to live on so much? You have a point. I don't like your point. But you have a point. So pull factors. Pull factors are the things that say, hey, come this way. Sometimes it's, we have jobs. I briefly considered abandoning Norco College for a completely ridiculous reason. Ireland was suddenly having a spike in their economy, and they wanted American college professors at Trinity College. I love the library at Trinity College. I took one picture of the whole college. It was of the library. I dream of this library. One day I would like a library just like this library. And I was like, I'll go. Bye. With Spencer Woods Little, I was offered a job. They said, hey, come work in Hawaii. We want you to work at the California Identification Laboratory in Hawaii. It's still high. It's not called JPAC. But it's basically the place where all servicemen remains go. We don't know who they are. And then we work out who they are. Sometimes we're still working out people from World War I. We work out who they are, and I was like, oh, I could do that. I could do that. I could do that. Then I realized I couldn't do that because I couldn't imagine having a conversation with my ex-husband. Yeah, by the way, I'm taking Spencer. That would have gone, no, you're not. Yes, I am. No, you're not. Yes, I am. And then I would have lost. So I wasn't having that. And the job seemed like, as a migrant, it seemed like a fabulous opportunity. They were going to pay me $60,000 a year. I had never even seen $60,000 a year. I later found out what it cost to live in Hawaii. And I was like, oh. They were essentially offering me minimum wage to live in downtown LA. Like, how would you live on minimum wage in downtown LA? It would be hard. You could do it, but it would suck. And apparently $60,000 a year would really suck. There would be a lot of ramen and spam in my diet from that point on. And so ultimately, I saw it as an opportunity for a better standard of living. It really was.
Of course, if things suck where you live, like people are shooting each other, there's unrest, there's political unrest or social unrest, you may just bail because another place looks nice and peaceful. And then, of course, you might be thinking about your kids, right? I have toiled all these years in rice paddies. I would like my kid to go to medical school, right? So you may migrate because of that. So if you consider these two push-pull things so that you can see their complements of each other, you can see why people would leave. Now, so bridges are things that make migration easier, barriers are things that make migration harder. So if you have, you consider this as opportunities and challenges. Typically, governments of incoming groups construct barriers. Right? There are immigration laws. Why can't anybody just show up here? Well, maybe everyone would come. Maybe. I mean, that might be kind of egotistical of us. If we just open the doors, everyone would just show up. Because we're so special. We're the sexiest. And it makes it sound like we're also the pass-around girl. We're being everybody.
I'm not cheap or easy. Cheap does everyone easy. It's cheap.
So, we actually require visas and passports and, my two friends actually, they are Australian. And they're here on a work visa. And every 2 years, they have to return to Australia, renew the visa, and come back. This has been going on for 12 years. He provides substantial benefit to our economy. They're both engineers. She's an engineer of brains. Like she would not be available for working at Chipotle. Right? That's not what she does. So she's not taking anybody's job. In fact, she's a stay-at-home mom. She's not taking anyone's job. But they have to go through this rigmarole every single year. When their child was born, because he was born in Calcutta, raised in London, or maybe he was born in London, one of the two, but his parents are from Calcutta. He ends up getting raised in London. He goes to school in Australia. She's born in Australia, and the child is born here. So the child has a passport from Britain, from India, from Australia, and from here. It turned out Australia was the hardest passport for her to get, even though both of her parents were educated by the Australian government. So we have these kinds of government-constructed barriers. They weren't sure they wanted a kid. Not the parents. Australia. All I can say is they just sent a picture of her because she gets the cutest job alive. So when you come in, you have to display a passport. While traveling through Central Europe, there's so many small countries there. I wouldn't even put my passport away sometimes. I'd be like, stamp. 10 minutes later, stamp. Half an hour later, stamp. It's just going through all these countries because everyone required tracking me going in and tracking me going out. So you may or may not be eligible to enter a country based on the passport you have. What if your passport is from the United States and you want to get it to Cuba? Don't get it stamped. Because it turns out you can get into Cuba. You can't get that gout, right? Because we're not supposed to travel to Cuba. Cuba, should you want to, it's fairly soon. Nonetheless, we are not supposed to go to Cuba. And so you don't get that stamped because you won't be able to get back in. I have a friend who has dual citizenship. She's Lebanese and American. And she made a mistake. She entered Lebanon on her Lebanese passport. She left Lebanon on her American. She tried to leave Lebanon on her American passport, and she ended up getting arrested because these papers are a form of barriers, right? So usually you get a visa. You get to visit a place for a certain amount of time. And those visa applications, by the way, are intensely personal. They talk about a government barrier. when I got a visa to go to China, and they asked me, oh gosh, the questions they asked me if I had syphilis, specifically. Do you have syphilis? No. How many pregnancies have you had? How many live births have you had? In other words, how many terminations have happened in your history? When was the last time you had a fever? If you are divorced, why are you divorced? And there's only 40 characters. I need more space. This takes more of an explanation. Right? Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. Having had sex outside of your marriage. Do we really need to talk about that? So, yeah, sometimes the trip is really difficult, right? I want to go to Madagascar in the worst way. It's not going to happen. So many flights, so hard to do. And I understand why Malagasy tend to stay right where they are, because it's hard to get out. Maybe if you're trying to migrate, you don't speak the language you're going to. Me, China, no good. Right? And maybe you do, but maybe it's difficult. Maybe you do speak the language, but your sense of understanding is you sort of speak the language, and it becomes quite challenging. If we look at bridges are about making migration a lot easier, right? And they help control some aspects of migration, so they're not so bad. And while migrations are all difficult, if you have some sort of bridge system in there, that makes it easier. Germany providing free education to United States citizens is a bridge mechanism. They're actually trying to convince you to migrate. Why would Germans be interested in you? I know, think about that for a second. The most, we were going to put a horrible ethnic stereotype upon them, the most organized people in the world, right? And then, what do they want with us? Exactly. We're a little bit flibberty-gibberty for them. We're a little bit loosey-goosey. Well, actually, I don't expect you to know the answer. I just want to see if you came up with an idea. They want something else. Okay, so Germany has this problem. And it's a problem that they, what's the problem? So here's the problem. German nationals, nationally born German nationals, multi-generational German nationals, i.e. German white people, have not been having babies. There's a really good reason for that. If you want to talk about some of the strictest paternity laws you've ever seen, a man is responsible for any offspring he creates until the child is 21. A man is responsible until the child is 21, regardless of marriage. So many men have declined to get involved in this. And professional women are taking men out to dinner and then complaining because the men are not putting out. Of course they're not putting out. Putting out could equal a 21-year commitment they don't want a part of. So they don't. They're not even having casual sex. Germany's got one of the best child care systems ever. Like, as soon as you're ready, your kid is probably in child care downstairs from where you work. Right? They have state-run, it's all absolutely run by the state. They're like, have babies. But what can Germans never say thanks to their history? White Germans, have babies. Please have babies. Because the entire world would be like, what, Germany? Remember how that went last time, Germany? Remember, right? You can't have that. And so they haven't said that. What they've said is like, professional people, have babies. What, you're encouraging a specific group to have babies at an exclusion of other groups, Germany? No. No. No, we were nothing of the sort. Their population is growing entirely through migration. Number one migrants are Turkish, who do not share the same ideology or the same religion, and they will not assimilate into the culture. So suddenly they're looking around and they're watching their population numbers shift from people who identify as ethnically German to people who are identifying as ethnically Turkish. Germany is legitimately worried that Turkey's taking over Germany one person at a time. You know, sort of like we joke about California, Mexico's taking it back. Actually, they've succeeded, right? They have. The vast majority of the population is ethnically Hispanic. Pretty soon, Alta Mexico. Right? So, that's all right, I'm happy with that. So they're very, very concerned. So what they're trying to do is encourage Americans to come and fill out the ranks. This is kind of, you're kind of like, wait, that's shady. Right? That's kind of shady, but they can't reproduce, so they're bringing in Americans.
Are they kind of saying that Americans are willing to have sex with people to create children?
Yes!
So they're basically saying that we're whores, in a sense.
We're available. We like to greet people with our genitals. So, and we have a sort of different moral code when it comes to that. You wouldn't want to ask, I mean, I'm sure they're going to invite people from Argentina too. So you wouldn't want to ask, you know, like, hey, you from that cold country, come here. No, you want to ask Americans because we're easy. And we will make babies. And pretty much as a nation, we're not Muslim. And they cannot say 80 of those things, because what would the world do? Germany, what are you doing? Are you up to no good again? Have you chosen a specific religion to go against again, Germany? How did that turn out for you last time, Germany? Right? You kicked their asses in World War I, and they've hardly bothered us since. Wait, no. It's true. We kicked their asses in World War I. They were very, very sad. And that's part of the reason World War II happened again, because they were like, we lost World War I because we were biologically inferior. We can be better. Let's be biologically better. World War II. So that's why I always joke, you know, oh, we handed them their asses in 1914. They hardly bothered us since then. No, it's just constant back and forth. And I say this as a joke. So, of course, the other thing that's really helpful as bridge mechanisms is having somebody who's already there, right? My nephew, this is how he migrated, right? My nephew left Germany, he came here. I'm certain that there was no point when he was a little kid, when he grew up, and he was like, all I want to live in is Rancho Cucamonga. Right? Like, I'm sure that did not occur to him. Oh, if I grow up and go to Narco College and live in Rancho Cucamonga, that would be the best. No, right? Nobody has that dream. It kind of goes the other way. Oh God, not Rancho Cucamonga. Not see if they even know where it is, right? By the way, travel outside of California, you can travel north in California, tell anyone you're from the Inland Empire and watch them go. You have to say, I'm from outside of LA, right? Yeah, I'm 60 miles east of LA. That's what I say, anywhere. Anywhere, the rest of the country. Actually, this just happened this weekend. I was in San Simón. That is only 300 miles away, a little less, on the coast. You know where Hearst Castle is? The tour guide said, where are you two from? And we said, the Inland Empire. And she said, is that in California? And I said, yes. San Bernardino, get your peeps on Route 66, the desert. She was like, so by Palm Springs. We're actually close to LA. I'm like, no. She was like, you're from where? The IE. Have you never heard of the IE? And she was like, no. Fine, I'm from Southern California. Whatever, close enough. So why did he come here? He came here because he had an aunt. And he followed his aunt here. When we migrate to places, we don't tend to pick places because we've always wanted to live there. We pick places because there's somebody there we already know. If I were to migrate to Germany right now, I would not return to my family's hometown of Fulda. My aunt is like, I don't know, 80 billion years old. She's probably like 70, 76, 77, something like that. She's old. I don't want to live with her. I mean, I love her, but I don't want to live with her. I would probably migrate to Hamburg and probably go to where my sister is. right? Set up housekeeping with my sister for a little while until I figured out where I was gonna live. All of Germany, and I'm gonna pick this one spot, because that's where my family is, right? So family connections create migration chains. And actually, I'm not the first to have received the incoming from Germany. That same aunt, she sent her daughter to my mother. Remember, my mom was like, "Why are you taking care of your sister's kid?" I'm like, "Why did you take care of your sister's kid?" Oh, right. Migration chains, right? Remember, I'm the child of an immigrant. My mom came, and then her sister sent her daughter after her. So this is how we know, because she already knew how to migrate. She already knew what to do. She already knew what the country was like. She already knew what the rules were. Especially when the language being spoken is not your primary language, it's a lot easier to have essentially someone who's your interpreter, right? Someone who's going to take care of you. And you do have to do a lot of that. It's surprising. My nephew does speak English fairly well now. But when he first arrived, there were a whole bunch of things he just didn't even have no idea how to navigate. Like he needed a driver's license, international driver's license. That's good for 10 days, my friend. You're going to need another license. What? I have to take a test? Yes! How would he know any of that if I wasn't here? Right? And then, of course, he needed health care. He arrived just in time for Coven, California. That was a lot of fun. He's like, "Help me navigate the system." I'm like, "Sure, I've learned the system first." Of course, the bridging factors aren't always family. Sometimes it's about speaking the same language. Don't think that didn't play a part in my, like, I'm going out to Dublin, bye. Not only do we speak the same language, we speak a cuter version of it. Right? I was like, I have to find myself an Irish husband. Yes, I will. I didn't have the husband I have now. Don't get nervous. So obviously we think that the culture shock is going to be a lot less. This is one of the reasons that when you travel, I really would like you to travel to non-English speaking countries. I want you to experience that. You're not migrating, right? You don't have to go live there, but try it. Go to Paris. Although Paris is really boring, overrated completely. Venice is fun. Venice really is a good time. Barcelona, honestly, what a good time. All right. All these places are great. Go out there. Go to Mexico later in a few years when it's a little safer. All right. This word up here, remittances and cumulative causation. Okay. Remittances. Does anybody know what that means? Remittances is giving money back. Actually, when you send, and when somebody sends you an invoice and they ask for payments, sometimes they'll ask for a remittance. That means pay me. Send money back. Okay? Cumulative causation, we'll get to that in a second. But remittances is send money back. So sometimes a whole family will decide we're going to send off this one individual and they're going to have a better job and they're going to support the whole family and send money back. Obviously, these are called remittances. And of course, remittances are not a small concern. Think about the number of times you've driven through communities locally where the primary language is not English. It could be Vietnamese, it could be Spanish, whatever. Count the number of Western Union signs you see. Right? Count the number of ways people can send money back home. You will find that there are check cashing places that are right next to your Western Union. Send money back home. So we see that this is a major, major business. In Saudi Arabia, the Egyptian workers themselves, they actually make up 5% of Egypt's total income for the nation, just by workers sending their money back. And they're not alone. We suspect that in 2005, immigrants from Mexico sent back $18 billion, made up $2% of the national income. And here's the other part that nobody took into consideration. Almost all that money was taxed in the United States and produced income for our country as well. So they think it's actually somewhere around 0.5% of the total 100% income for the year came from tax money. And because it's tax money that they will not file a tax return on, guess who gets to keep it? Right? right? You have people working below the poverty line, but the government gets to keep it. They may be paying in on a false social security number. Guess who gets to keep it, right? So it's a big thing in the economy. I'm not always sure why the government's all like, stop immigration. I'm like, you're making money, shut up. So it can be a benefit for everybody involved, except the person who actually did the migration. And that's where cumulative causation comes in, right? The families benefit, the governments benefit. But you literally sent this poor guy out on the ice floe, right? Like, bye! You didn't even like tie a rope around him like poltergeist to bring him back, right? You just sent him out there. Go make money. We'll love you so much. We're so proud of you. Thanks for making our life better. And what's his life like every day? Go to work, come home, probably go to a second job, come home, eat, go to sleep, probably not for 8 hours. Go to work, come home, go to work, come home. Notice what we're lacking here. A social life, friends, love, kids, all those things. Literally, it's just like you dropped him down a mine and said, do this. And he said, okay. So we have labor immigrants, we have professional immigrants, we have entrepreneurial immigrants, and we have refugees. Right? So labor immigrants. Labor immigrants, of course, the majority. This is what we've been talking about all along, mostly unskilled laborers, and maybe people who work in hotels, who work in restaurants, who work picking crops, who work in any job that it only takes about 10 minutes to explain how to do. That's typically the kinds of jobs we see. That's what we call unskilled labor. Maybe the actual definition is you have to be able to learn your job in an hour. Unskilled labor. Many of you would argue with that definition. You may be considered unskilled labor somewhere, and they spend an hour teaching you how to fold a perfect shirt. Right? Small's on top and large on the bottom, still being the same size. Yeah. Hot topic, etc. Some nations have what we call a guest worker program. We actually have one in the United States. It's not so robust right now. But basically it says, hey, you're an unskilled laborer, you can come in and do this job, but then you gotta go. Like, this was particularly popular in Arizona, where you would have people who owned construction companies and people who owned farms would drive to the border, pick up the guest laborers, the guest workers, drive out, and bring them back a month later. They were guest labor. We had this temporary period of time. And of course, a lot of people are like, hey, that means you're taking away American jobs. Actually, what you should really worry about is you are taking a whole bunch of people that you are systematically exploiting, and it's cool. It's fine. You don't have to give them health care. You don't have to give them anything. Just pick them up, use them up, drop them off. That's great. That's not so great. But what would happen if we didn't bring them in? Are you going to do that job? If somebody said to you, hey, I got a job picking strawberries, you'll make depending on how fast you pick strawberries, you'll make up to $2 an hour. You down? No. So who picks the strawberries? What was another option? Would you pick the strawberries if they paid you a living wage for the strawberry? Right? If they paid you $12 an hour to pick strawberries, would you pick strawberries? You're like, nope. You ever pick strawberry? It's actually not that bad. Like, I pick strawberries over cotton any day. So, okay, so maybe you do it. Maybe you'd be like, all right, $12 an hour, I can do this job for a while. But then what would happen to the prices of strawberries? Right, we're all told they would skyrocket. Do you know what skyrocket is? How much are strawberries now? Do you know? Let's say we're in season. They're $5.99 a pound right now. In season, they're $2.99 a pound. If we actually paid the laborers real money, in season they'd be $3.50 a pound, and out of season they would still be $5.99 a pound. That's skyrocketing. You know why? Because if you count it per percentage of how much the strawberries are. Oh my God, the strawberries went up like 14%. inflation. We can't have this. Like, dude, we're talking about 50 cents a box. You'd buy the strawberries, right? You would. You're like, oh, 50 cents more. You don't even know why they're $2.99 or $5.99 most of the time. You're like, today's strawberries with this much, I'll tell them. Or I won't have them. That's it. So we have this thing, but all the prices will go crazy if we pay them a living wage. That's not actually true. This is a discussion we're having all over the country in low-wage food jobs, right? Where, remember the McDonald's workers were striking? Pay us $15 an hour, or we will not make you a McRib. Right? And there's a couple of people who have actually, a couple of businesses have actually done it. It turns out they're doing fine. They're doing well. So the idea is the cheap wages. So people leave their countries for better wages, right? The guest workers are supposed to come give their labor cheaply, but the money is better than it would be if they were back home. And then they say, we don't actually want you to stay here. And therein lies some of the problems with migration, because one of the things we haven't talked about is how does the incoming community feel about the migrants? Right? Talk a little bit about it. How many of you went to a Day of the Dead ceremony or some sort of Day of the Dead celebration after Halloween? So apparently both of us? 3 of us? Okay. One of the objections that the local Latino communities make is that white people like myself should not be in attendance. The reason we should not be in attendance is, they say, you like our stuff, but you don't want us. You want to take our cultural icons, but you don't want us in the process. F you. No, of course, I don't feel that way. I'm like, yes, of course I want you. Yeah. It's a really big place, California. I've been out looking for dead bodies, and I've driven for hundreds and hundreds of miles without seeing a person. We clearly have space. Tons of it. I'm not worried about it. But I understand their point, right? Their point being that come here, do the work we don't want to do, don't stay, we don't like you, we like your stuff. That's pretty exploitive, isn't it? All right. So every time we talked about actually having a real guest worker program in the United States, everybody goes, no. And it's not about, no, we'll be treating these people badly. It's no, they'll be taking our jobs, right? And of course, it's not true. It's not all true. Okay, professional immigrants, these you may be less familiar with. These are people who immigrate who are doctors, lawyers, teachers. You may be somewhat familiar with this if you have been in a hospital anytime recently. You probably had a doctor who was Indian, right? That's right, that is what you had. And you were like, oh, okay. Actually, my last 3 doctors. One was Korean, and his command of the English language was not effective. One was Indian, and he sounded like at any moment he would be offering tea and crumpets. He sounded completely British. And yeah, a little for that, Indian. One for that, Pakistani. Yeah, it's pretty much like that. And many people from, especially English-speaking countries, will migrate over here. Now, for medical degrees, they're kind of a bummer because if you do medical degrees anywhere outside the United States, you can start over here. We used to allow people to do medical work outside of the United States, come here, take a test, and they could prove that they had the same skills, and we don't do that anymore. When I was a kid, it was possible to be what we called part of the Quad Squad. You couldn't get into medical school here, you could go to Guatemala, and you could go to medical school in Guatemala, and get your degree, come back, you're a Quad Squad, but you'd probably get a job in a hospital. They're usually the place, even when they're educated in places like Oxford or other places that we consider hoity-toity, because, you know, England, they do not necessarily admire their careers so well. So usually you want to advance your career, so sometimes they're going to have to go back and do some more work, or sometimes it's because there is more opportunities. Admit it, if you're a doctor and you work in a socialized medicine situation, you have the possibility of coming here and doing private medicine. Yeah, especially if you specialize in diseases of the rich. So smart. Yeah, diseases of the rich are fantastic. I have a, right, apparently turkeynegus developing, right? I have gout, from overeating fatty foods. Right, diseases of the rich, awesome. You will do quite well. So, if they come from a place where they're not, we wouldn't say, you don't want to say anybody's third world, that's actually quite rude, so you would say that they are in a periphery system or a less developed nation. We don't say someone's third world. And also, if there's a third world, what the heck is second world? No one ever seems to be able to describe that. So we sometimes call this the brain drain, when professionals leave one area and come to other areas because of the opportunities. And of course, that's going to leave social gaps, right? So if all the lawyers and all the doctors leave the periphery countries to come here to make extra money, what happens there? Right, you need doctors and lawyers and all of those things. And it is a heck of a lot easier to migrate if you are a professional. If you are a doctor, if you are a lawyer, and you want to move, they're like, well, I see you can make some contributions. Right? If you come and you're like, I want to work at Chipotle. Okay. So we define these as a group between labor classes and professional classes as entrepreneurial classes. These are guys that haven't yet made it where they're coming from, but they believe they can make it here. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere, right? So they are typically going to have a little bit of a harder trip. The professionals have an easier migration, right? They're usually have some kind of skill set. This has been, I think, it's really obvious in Dubai. If you've ever Googled Dubai, how to look at Dubai, you can see you have all these non-professionals who are suddenly like, they are changing their economic futures because of the skill sets that they have. They are entrepreneurial migrants, typically from elsewhere. Dubai is sort of a created utopia almost, and it's a beautiful place. So they're going to open a business, create a business when they enter into the new country. Now, of course, in the United States, we recognize, oh, okay, so you have people who come in, open dry cleaners or nail salons or convenience stores or whatever. So they migrated here to do that. And usually they're going to know other individuals in the community and use a network of these individuals. So they're going to sometimes pool their capital together to start a business. Sometimes they're going to hire other folks that they had immigrated with them. This is particularly the case in the Russian community in New York. This is how they did it. They would migrate out of Berkeley. They would escape Russia. Now they migrate, but then at that time they would escape. They would escape Russia, they would bring others with them, and they would form this enclave where everybody pooled their money together and start these businesses. They become the space where everybody comes to when they make their migration. So, Americans don't really do this the other way. Why? Why do we tend not to just go off to other countries and start our businesses? Because we like here. If you're going to start a business, we're going to start it here. You're like, all my opportunities are here. So you may not recognize the kinds of commitments that happen when you're raising capital amongst people. But if you, by the way, if you wanted to help people who are doing this in their home countries, and not to prevent immigration, I'm not arguing you should be xenophobic, but if you'd like to see people have kinds of successes where they can stay near their families, I have a recommendation for you. It's a charity. It's called Kiva. Kiva is a small organization that do microloans. Microloans are small loans. This way, because if they're trying to do these kinds of entrepreneurial stuff back in their home country, some of the things they face is raising the capital. They may not raise it from a community of immigrants like themselves. They raise it from locally who has the money, and sometimes those people are bad people, right? With crazy interest, like 50% a day compounded kind of interest, like mob level interest. And so how do these people get started? Well, they need loans, but they can't go to the bank. What do they have in terms of capital? Nothing. So Kiva is an organization where people can get together and do microloans. So like right now, I have a loan. I loaned $25 to a lady in Tibet. She started a stall selling children's clothes. She makes the clothes herself. I also have $25 invested in a young girl goat herder in the middle of Africa. I helped her buy 3 goats. So when they pay that money back, by the way, then I reinvested in someone else. So I've actually made the same 50 bucks work for 6 people. So I, spread out my 25 bucks, they pay me back, I then give it to somebody else, they pay me back, I give it to somebody else and they pay me back. So it's not really, it's a loan, not a gift, and it keeps working for people so that they can actually do this themselves. And there are Kiva funds. If you were really like, I want to do this for people in the United States, you can do that too. You can choose your, well, you can loan just by sex, like I only loan women. I only want to loan to women from this part of Africa. I only want to loan to women who are from the United States. I only want to loan to young women. I only want to loan to old women. I only want to loan to married women. I only want to loan to women with kids. I only want to loan to men with kids. I only want to loan to brothers who have started a book business. Like you can do that, and it's a cool way of handling it. It's actually my favorite gift to people is to give them $25 to give away to somebody else. Kiva, K-I-V-A. Yeah, so like I have my Australian friends. They're very non-possession people. So every time I go to give a gift to their kid, they don't want toys, they don't want books, they don't want anything. So I give her 25 bucks for Kiva. And she and her mom sit together. She's a baby, so she doesn't really, she kind of makes decisions like this. But that's okay, she can do that. And so I have her constantly investing in other communities. It's kind of a fun way to teach kids how to give. So that's how we end up with entrepreneurial immigrants. So sometimes it's all about importing goods from your own country for sale, right? You open a local market. Maybe you're the only one who's selling a particular item, or you know that there's an immigrant community who's going to miss that item. So you open that place. And because you open that place, you bring other members of the community you may not know who are also immigrants, and you form a larger community, right? There used to be, when I was in Santa Monica, there was a German store. And I would find all the other Germans there when we were in search of our sausages. Because there's nothing that will bring Germans together like sausages. Not always sausages. We are, Worcester. We are all about the sausage. That is central to our diet. And Savalapwurst is a special kind. Savalapwurst is a kind of salami. You only get it in Germany or in German delis. And we will line up around the block for Savalapwurst. And not sauerkraut, my friends, Savalapwurst. Or Nürnberger Bratwurst. Oh yes, Bratwurst, very delicious. Notice how I think I suddenly got, sorry. But yeah, exactly. We all get together in these places and expand our networks. I'm sure many of you have been to ethnic parts of town that are like literally ethnic enclaves where people come together, immigrant cities like Koreatown, Chinatown, Japantown, those kinds of places, little Japan, little Tokyo in LA, it's Japantown in Florida, but little Tokyo, right? And you see these places where immigrants will come together and they will import goods from their native country, and they're also really marketing the sale to everybody else too, like, hey, you really want a Happy Cat, right? right? Lucky kitty. You want lucky kitty? I don't want a lucky kitty. Or you need, some reason in your house, you need Amitabha, my favorite Buddha, not actually Bodhisattva, but my favorite Bodhisattva, the fat, happy Buddha, Amitabha, so lucky Buddha, the one that has the giant belly. These are the other students we learned. I'm making a face. Lucky Cat is the little white cat who has the gold all over him and he's always doing this. You know, Lucky Cat. Right? We all know Lucky Cat. Now there's refugees. Refugees are something different. Refugees is, they're running. Right? Something is bad, something's going on in their home country. It's usually oppression. We saw a flood of refugees after the Arab Spring, right? We're actually confronted with a refugee problem right now in Iraq. The people that we use as translators, they're going after their families, right? And in places where towns have been retaken, they're going after their families. We should be granting them citizenship because that's actually what we agreed we were going to do when we asked them to be interpreters for us. And we aren't doing it. We've had 530 applications and we have approved 3 in 5 years. 3. So where are these people going? They're getting in their cars, or they're borrowing cars, or they're running literally through the night. And those are refugees. They will land in other countries and find a place to hide. You very rarely ever hear the term American refugee, right? Because we don't do that. I can only think of one American refugee right now. Very good. Edward Snowden is the only American refugee I know of. And it's because he fears the violence of his home country. And he's actually technically a refugee. He really is, because his home country has become a scary, scary place for him. You're not a refugee if you're like, hey, I murdered somebody, my home country is not safe for me anymore. I gotta go this way. That's not a real refugee, but for him, his situation is a little bit different. He exposed a national secret, considered a traitor, but I don't know. Anyway, so, the UN in 2010, there were about 15.4 million refugees. Since then, we believe the number has increased by 25%. So there's almost 20, a little over 20 million refugees that are all over the world. We have, actually, we just had a recent bump up in refugees. Where are they running from? West Africa. Why are they running from West Africa? Ebola, right? By the way, in perspective, it's a very small part of the world that is, we need to help them. That's not all I'm saying. It's a very small part of the world affected by Ebola. And we look at everybody who comes out of West Africa like, you are potentially dangerous. In fact, everybody who comes out of Africa, you could be holding the zombie disease, right? Everybody who's been traveling, you can't touch your dog. So, yeah, there are a lot of upheavals that you aren't familiar with at all because they aren't really covered by Western media. We don't really cover a lot of things that go on outside of our little sphere of influence. Some of you may have enjoyed the film Captain Phillips because you were like, what? Somali pirates? They're real? They're real! This really happens, right? I hear in my head, come to Somalia, pirates. In the Congo, a whole mess of people have died. 4 million people have died. There's been a civil war going on since 1998. We report very little of it. Many of you only found out there was actually something going on in Rwanda when you watched the movie Hotel Rwanda. You were like, what? People have been killing each other here for 5 years. What? There was a horrible period of 130 days where all these people died. What? Right? We just don't know what's going on because we have a very, very limited worldview. So knowing that these things are going on now, I mean, I can't tell you about all of them, it would take a semester. you recognize that there are people who are literally fleeing for their lives. It's not just about economics, it's about staying alive. So, once you flee for your life, then what happens to you? When you get to the place where you're fleeing for your life, what have you got? Nothing. Also, here's the other thing, a bunch of refugees are children. Their parents are paying all the money they have to get them to someone to get them out of the country. So the children arrive with no money if they arrive at all. Sometimes they're kidnapped, they're held hostage, all kinds of things happen, very, very, very traumatic event. And then they've got to start over. All right, and a totally different situation between how it's like, what it's like to be a woman immigrating versus what it's like to be a man. Of course, women are often labor immigrants, right? And they may have suddenly a kind of economic power they didn't have in their home country, right? Now they're earning their own money. They're making their own cheddar, right? Cheddar. So they're making their own cheddar, they're making their own money, and they have a kind of power they didn't have before. It's not a living. And if they can send their remittances back home, everybody gets proud of them, right? They're super, super proud of them. There's a festival in a place called Kabakode, which is in Brazil. No. It's in Peru. And they have a festival every year that they used to have, like the richest guy, whoever the richest guy was in the community would throw this great big party, and usually a feast for a saint, right? Throw this great big party, and then that guy would have all the status from having thrown this party. Remember those leveling mechanisms, right? Those things. And there's actually a whole community where all of the migrants were women, and they all left. They went to New York. They send their remittances back. Now they throw the party every year. They are very special women, and they call them dons. They're important women, right? They're men of dons, but they are dons. And they have increased their status. They also have a say in the community. They don't even live in it anymore because they're the ones sending home the money. So obviously, work gives you new countries gives you new social networks. In places where you may have had a bride price paid for you, you're not going to have a lot of social networks unless it's your co-wife. But if you move to a place where you work at the labor, you're going to make friends. And if your husband's a douchebag, you're going to find ways out because now you have friends. Now your friends will save you. So they have a ton of freedom. Now men, not so much, right? They may have had a say in their previous community. They may be cutting themselves off, actually, from their social network. Because typically, when you send out that one lone person from the family to send back remittances, it's usually the males. That's typically what happens. And so they find themselves here at the bottom of the social hierarchy, and back at home, reduced in the social hierarchy. So, now in the United States, the vast majority of immigrants who are immigrant laborers are women. This is a switch. 50 years ago it was men, by far and away. Now it's women. So, and not just from Latin America, but from all over the world because of the economic freedoms that it can provide. So we're going to start seeing bigger and bigger debates. You're familiar with the women in migration thing because it's becoming an issue for us. Often they are bringing their children, or they send their children ahead of time when they follow their children. Right? And we're aware of their stories because they're being held in detention centers while they try to figure out what to do with them. Now, of course, many of you probably felt some sort of connection to this part of the chapter, right? Because we have immigration and the generational effect that immigration has, right? So, many of you describe yourselves as a child of an immigrant. So, first generation immigrant is actually used to describe the person who left their home country and got here. Like, I often misrepresent myself because I say I'm a first generation kid. But I say that because my understanding of what your understanding is. I'm trying to describe to you. I was the first one born here. Right? My mom migrated. She's actually the first generation migrator. I'm technically a second generation migrator because I was born here. My mom migrated here. But I am the first generation within her side of the family to be born in the United States. So, I'm a second generation, according to the real rules of it. But when I describe that to people, if I say I'm second generation, you assume that means my parents were born here, and then I was born here. And that's actually not the case. Right? One of my parents was born here. One of my parents was not. So, sometimes you may hear somebody go, 1.5 my generation migrants. So they're like, okay, I was born elsewhere, but I was brought here as a wee little baddie. My remembrance of home country is none at all. So even though you're actually first generation migrant, they call you 1.5 because you were so, that you have no, it wasn't like you were jettisoning your previous culture. You just sort of got rewritten over. So you got enculturated in your new place. So this is something that I had planned on doing, and we are out of time for us to do this. Did you write this down ahead of time, or did you have a thing? Yes, you did. Turn it in. All right, and then